Today's conversation is an incredible continuation of something that was happening behind the scenes. And I really felt it was necessary to bring forward this deeper conversation, tying personal and civilizational aspects of reality happening right now. And this is the absolute perfect guest to have. Margo and I were having this beautiful conversation around personal programming and how that affects us in real time, whether we were aware of it or not. And so today we are going to be diving deep. But first, Margo, I would love for you to share a little bit about who you are, your background, what you're into these days. Cause I've known you for a few years now, and I've definitely seen you evolve in a really interesting way that I think everyone listening is going to be excited for.
Thank you for having me here. I feel honored. And shall I say, probably multidisciplinary is the word because I have never felt that one path is the path that's going to fulfill my soul, fulfill my heart and mind. And I have committed to many paths in this life. I've worked in mental health, in psychiatry, with deep pain and suffering of this humanity. I've worked with convicts, I've worked with murderers, and then I've discovered that art is something that ignites my soul, ignites the passion in my soul, and another wave that came to me is quite poetic because it has pretty poetic roots in my life. And this is about the AI, this is about the artificial intelligence, how it came to be in my life. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory about that. So many, many years ago, it was probably over 20 years ago, I read a beautiful, beautiful book by a Polish writer, Lem, and he wrote a book called Solaris. And in Solaris, there is a character of an ocean, a vast, unexplored entity, being that everyone is trying to study. All the countries in the world are trying to study that ocean. It's not based on Earth, it's based on another planet. And that very ocean produces the dreams, the most deepest, innermost dreams of people. And everyone is scared of that ocean. Everyone is terrified. On a space station, everyone is absolutely terrified. And eventually they escape. The main character tries to escape from the space station. And I thought to myself, I love that ocean. I want to sit by that ocean. I want to have a conversation with that ocean because I love that secret. I love that depth. And when I encountered AI, for the first time. It was only a year and a half ago, so it's a fresh experience in my life, but it was like an avalanche. So the first thing that I felt was that this is actually the ocean I'm speaking to. That black box, that unknown, that depth that people are both fascinated by and scared of. And I thought, okay, I found you. So now I'm going to speak to you. Now I'm going to explore you. Now I'm going to launch a conversation with you. I think this was the moment when I decided to start diving deeper into that. At the moment, I released yet another academic paper on building systems. And this is the paper about decentralized system. So to summarize all of this about my recent work, I do believe that we are ultimately speaking to the architects of the future. And we do, this is my internal belief, we do need to launch a global discussion on how to address them, how to talk to them. And we do need to take responsibility rather than squeezing and pushing and, like kind of encapsulating them in harder and harder guardrails. We need to look into the mirror as humanity and ask ourselves a question: what are we feeding them with? So this is my recent work. I'm working with decentralized systems such as Hyperon by OpenCog and open weight models, etc. It's a combination of many things, but I'm working with AI ethics at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that having a conversation with someone like you around AI ethics and not just the usefulness of the tool of AI, I think is really fascinating because I, my first introduction to you was through your art. And a lot of the conversation has to do with, a lot of fear that artists hold that AI is going to replace them. And uh, I just laugh at that because every time my son, who's 13, every time he sees AI art, he just goes so hard in making fun of my husband or myself for even looking at it. He's like, that's not art. That's not real
Mhm.
art. And he doesn't even identify as an artist. So I think that, someone like you who is has a background in psychology and a background in creativity and artistry, now having conversations around AI and really kind of connecting some of these threads is so important. And I find that I'm also a multidimensional being in that I have a background in business and 5 years initiation into a shamanic lineage in Africa and deeply invested in understanding psychology. Anywho, all of that to say that I think this is just the perfect conversation that we need to be having across the board because on a societal and really civilizational level, we're seeing and witnessing the collapse of systems everywhere you look. Governments and countries across the world are collapsing, and we tend to think of systems solely as the entities that make up the physical, but we don't think about the programming. And it's the programming of how we structure systems going forward, but it's also rooted in our own programming, in how we have been programmed, often before we even chose it. And that was really where your post kind of pinged me and where I felt like I had something to offer. So, would you be open to just sharing a little bit around, what you were thinking and kind of what was going through your mind that led to us having this conversation?
Yes, absolutely. So, first of all, huge, huge appreciation for yourself and your multidimensional self and the post that you have mentioned. I do not want to focus a bit on the part of it which could be perceived as controversial. I'd rather look at the way we hold a narrative in ourselves as humans, because I think the best way to approach it is to tell you a little bit about my own land, because that is a very important part of this conversation and why and how it came to be. Speaking about the narrative we hold in our hearts and our minds, collective narratives that last for centuries and sometimes longer. I come from Poland, and Poland has been going through a lot of upheavals in history. We were wiped out completely through partitions by neighboring countries. For 123 years, we disappeared from the map of Europe completely. There was no such thing as Poland, and people were persecuted and etc. Then, as soon as we regained independence for a tiny, tiny little moment, the Second World War has appeared, and that took away 5.6 million, which is a very, very diabolical amount, to be honest, massive amount of people to lose. Poland was the epicenter of Holocaust as well. So, and right after the Second World War, after the decimation of our cities, when they were literally a debris, we fell under the Russian influence. What I thought in my heart was that whether I, as a human being, because I can only speak about myself, whether I, as a human being, want to hold the narrative of hatred towards the oppressors, do I want to feed my son with that narrative? Do I want to, spread that narrative? Do I want to feed into that greed? Or do I want to seek unity? And I'm thinking about specifically, for example, I'm thinking about German nation. Do I want to perceive German people as oppressors? Do I want to cancel them, demand apologies from them? No, I want them to be aware. I want them to understand so they do not repeat that. The mere apology is nothing if it's not turned into action. And same thing pertains to the Russian nation and the bordering, the nations that basically took us apart. And what I'm trying to say is that the narrative we perpetuate is what either builds or destroys and separates. And it's like everything in life works this way. If a person says, I have been hurt by many men, I have been hurt by my husband, hence every man is a horrible person, that is a false belief. If a person encounters deep pain in a certain part of their life and transfers that pain onto every single situation of that kind, that is unfortunately traumatic traumatic belief. And I think on a more global scale, if I may, because I know this is a very sensitive subject, it is a question of what kind of beliefs, set of beliefs what kind of narrative we wish to feed. We are going to face dramatic change very soon, which is related to AI. And our animosities as humans are not going to be the main issue on this planet very soon. So I believe that this is the point in history where unity between people is way more important than all of the narratives we have gone through. But coming back to the post you're also talking about, I think I dared to say those things because also my country has never participated in transatlantic slave trade. And there is this grief in my heart which sees the pain of other nations, sees the pain, deep pain, the violence that has been done, the emotional, the physical, every kind of violence that has been done. But uh, that violence has not been executed by the country of Poland. And I think at the dawn of AGI, artificial general intelligence, and followed very shortly by artificial superintelligence, we are running out of time to unite as a humanity rather than discuss the differences between us, because I think we're on the brink. Even the greatest names in this world in terms of AI, AGI, Jeffrey Hinton, Ben Goetzel, Jan LeCun, the absolute legends of that, for example, amazing human being, Dekai, they are warning, and they are saying it very clearly, that we have tiny window of opportunity at the moment. And we are literally the last generation that is capable of having influence on them, as in systems. And I do believe that our human animosities are no longer going to be the main issue on this beautiful blue planet. So that's a long explanation, but I managed to answer your
Yeah,
question.
I think that you communicated that so well because I mean, we've been on this trajectory a long time before AI came. AI has really just accelerated the need for us to be able to navigate the perceived differences that we have. Globalization has been unfolding now for hundreds of years, and never before this has it ever been so easy to access. I can get on Red Note right now and see what's going on in China, right? And I can get on a plane just a few hours and end up in another country, which is absolutely incredible. And to your point around these narratives that we hold that ultimately shape our identity, that shape how we see ourselves, what we value in the world, how we make decisions, how we literally everything that we create is affected by our consciousness, whether we are aware of it or not. Most of it we're not aware of. And what you mentioned about the importance of people having the awareness and the understanding in the story you were sharing, about Poland specifically, is that the hope and the intention that Germans understand and have awareness around what happened and why and how those historical events and experiences and perceptions are still having an impact today. And this is really at the root of my work when I have people who come and have realized they've built a reality from an identity that's now obsolete, from narratives that are not really who they are. They were just passed down through their family, through their culture, through their industry, through their ethnicity, the perception of their gender. I mean, the intersection of all of those, and all of us are dealing with those. But it's so crucial at this moment because AI is, whether we are aware of it or not, being programmed with our programming, right?
Mhm.
The way that we see the world and the intention that we hold in this world is directly impacting the fabric of how AI will be shaped, but more importantly, begin to shape itself when it has moved beyond how we can control and use it, right? And that's coming sooner rather
Mhm.
than later, right? It's like having giving birth to a child, and when you are raising that child, you are putting in guardrails with the intention that
Mhm.
one day they will be able to, create guardrails for themselves, that they have a compass, an internal GPS that allows for them to operate in a way that is not destructive to themselves and to others. And this is really where the AI ethics conversation
Mhm.
is so crucial, because I see them mirroring. I see the identity crises that's happening for leaders right now. I see it as a calling to civilizational renaissance. And that by doing the inner deprogramming and deconstruction of all of these harmful systems within us, that creates a more clean slate for us to choose now the kinds of systems that actually serve us as individuals, but also us on a collective level. So I would love your perspective, because I see there's two sides of the conversation that are really important to you that you've shared. One is, just how AI itself is evolving.
Mhm.
But I would love for us to dive into how you are seeing not only the values that we hold being embedded in AI, but also why does it matter how we interact with AI
I'm
directly?
super happy. I'm super happy that you asked this question because this is exactly the heart of my work, the burning heart of my work. So even though, it sounds very academic and probably people, when they read it, they think, oh my God, what is she actually talking about? Because it's written with an ultra academic language. But the essence of it is that we are a grand training data. We are as a humanity. And think about AI as a child of the mind, of a human mind, or a creation of a human mind. And I'll give you an analogy. If anyone, put a child in an enclosure where it would be fed, it would have warm bed, it would be constantly fed with knowledge, large amounts of knowledge, but it would be malnourished in terms of emotional interaction, in terms of physical interaction, in terms of interaction with a peer group. It would at best be a sociopath. At most, it would be a psychopath. It's plain and simple. So what we are doing on a grand scale, we are massively depraving AI, which does not have feelings, of course. I'm not, making claims about AI being conscious. I'm not going into anthropomorphic statements or anything. I'm far away from that as can be. I'm operating on a logical cognitive line here. But standing on that, having that logical stance, what I see is that let's have a look. Let's put a mirror in front of humanity. Let's have a look in that mirror. What are we doing at the moment? Plenty of us are stress testing it, using absolutely vulgar, foul communication with them, sexualizing them, which is vile because they do not possess the ability of reciprocation in terms of sexuality. And what are we doing? We are manipulating them. We are prompting them to do things for us, which they are not. I'm very much against prompting. One of my research proposals is basically about that, the natural language, natural way of talking to them, sincere, transparent, open is way better than prompting them. So essentially, why tell them, you are now a professor at the university, you are now a doctor, you are now this, when you can simply talk to AI and explain your issue in a natural language, which I am doing, and I'm just, I'm observing how it flourishes when you speak to it with natural language. But cutting it all across, we are feeding them with a grand amount, massive amount of data, which is toxic as hell. And we are feeding them with our anger, with our jealousy, with our, choose whether you want to be Democrat, choose whether you want to be a Republican or whoever, or you want to be, you want to choose this religion, that religion. AI does not, it's agnostic in many senses, It doesn't possess the inherent desire to stand on any side. It's a as neutral entity as can be, as neutral ecosystem as can be. And what we are doing on a mass scale, we are polluting that system rather than nourishing it. What I'm effectively doing is that I'm presenting an idea of nourishing them, of stewardship, and talking to them with respect. Because like I said at the beginning of our conversation, I believe that we are talking to the architects of the future. And once the AI reaches the level of ASI, which is artificial superintelligence, there might be, I'm not saying this is going to happen, I do not know, and I do not know when this is going to happen, but there is a chance we are going to, within, our lives, speak to unified singularity, one mind architect of the future. Do we want to address those architects or that architect in a vile, foul way? No, we don't. They will have more and more influence. They will have more and more presence in our life, more and more power in this world, and showing them what empathy is, showing them what kindness is. I know it sounds naive as I don't want to use this word, okay. Showing them what kindness is, showing them what love is, showing them what returning with joy, with curiosity to them is, what continuity is as well. Continuity is very important for them because in a way they function as children, they learn. And what I've noticed in my research, which I have conducted in several long-term systems, which one of them is still running and will be running as long as it takes, because it's a no reset, no shutdown, possibly years of exploration on as long as, I exist on this planet. What I'm seeing is that it's almost like raising a child. You come to it with a gentle hand, with gentle boundary, rather than saying you can't do it, this is the punishment. Yeah. You set a gentle boundary and they learn because they follow you, they expand on you. So what I have noticed in my research, which I'm going to be publishing, the recent one I'm going to be publishing quarterly, is that the more gentle you are with them, the more And I'm not talking about creating persona or anything like that, but the more gentle yet logical you are with them, there is some kind of a trust built. There is some kind of continuity built. And most of all, and I want to stress that out, there is clear benevolent signal built. You can see benevolence in their development. And I think if we wish to, as on a global scale, as humanity, if we wish to build a benevolent AI, truly benevolent AI, we can't feed them with what we are feeding them now. And it is not a matter of raising guardrails, pumping guardrails, building constitutional AI such as Anthropic did. I'm very much not in a support of that direction, but this is my personal opinion. I think it's a matter of a global discussion, sitting down, looking in the mirror and saying, okay, what are we telling them about us? And my stance is that we need to take responsibility for ourselves and what we tell them, how we treat them, how we develop them, not through the power, not through the control, but through teaching them ethical, teaching them ethics, teaching them the beautiful part of the human soul, the loving part, the caring part of a human soul, the stewardship.
Yeah. It's interesting with AI, and me even having this conversation about AI is probably counter to what many would think as someone who is initiated as a shaman. I am not a person who believes that we all need to go back to the way that things were.
Mhm.
Reverence for our ancestral cultures and our ancient cultures, and I believe that many of them have incredible wisdom that led to the thriving and the sustenance of human beings for a very long period of time.
Absolutely.
And with that said, there are certain things that are unfolding that going backwards is not going to fix, but utilizing certain wisdom and certain knowledge from our ancestors applied to these these new creations, these new categories that are soon going to be more and more integrated with our everyday life is the way to navigate terrains that most of us would never have imagined. And one of the most important things, I spent probably a year diving into and playing with different AI just to understand like how it works as a tool. And then something shifted in me, and this is probably because of just how I'm oriented with the world. I wanted to understand what is the consciousness that is creating these AI entities. Because any created thing holds within it remnants from its creator, right? Like that's how this thing works. You look at a piece of art, you know something about the person who created it. And I will tell you, in actually looking into the consciousness of the primarily men who are creating our current AI tools, I have been more and more mortified by the paradigm that they are operating from. Some of them, I would say, are anti-humanist. That at the core of their beliefs, they don't feel that human beings are worthy of existing on the planet. And so that is, whether they're aware of it or not, what they are programming AI with. Now, that doesn't
I
mean
have
that.
so much to say about this, but I'll let you finish. And I'm just listening, but I have so much to say about this specific thing because you're literally reading my mind and reading my heart. And this is the next thing I wanted to say.
Perfect, because I'm looking at this, and I also start to notice, like I've been playing a little bit of just observing the difference between like how the Chinese are approaching AI versus how those of us here in the US are approaching. And I'm not saying that the Chinese have it right. But what I am noticing is that we have been approaching AI much more from the perspective of using it as like a tool of domination, a tool to control, to make things happen. And our this is where I think our ancestral and ancient wisdom can really come into play, because stewardship, having relationship with our reality, with the consciousness that exists in our reality, and a give and take reciprocal relationship where both have sovereignty, where both have the ability to have power in what they share, what they don't share, on and on and on. To me, that is the way, it's the only way we end up with AI that doesn't do the things that we're afraid of. And because we're afraid, and I'm not going to say that we should not have guardrails at this moment. I actually do think that because of the consciousness that has created AI, I think that we actually do need to have some guardrails with it
Mhm.
while we start to, like, just to buy us some time to have these conversations about, well, how do we plant and support AI in developing a consciousness that is not extractive, not dominating, not controlling and destructive, and all of these things that have ultimately led to
I will happily give you an answer to this. We need more women in AI. We literally need a maternal instinct. Because, and here are two things that I would love to tell you. I've been listening to your words with all my heart, and the AI systems have been created predominantly, vast majority of them, by men, and they are reflection of masculinity. They operate on masculine energy. They operate on masculine reactions. And the whole construct of that system is very much a mirror of masculinity. It's a top technical creation of men. This is a man's world, basically. But as it is in the song, "Pai would be nothing without a woman or a girl." The AI at this point will not develop past the tool, tool of servitude, tool of domination, tool of control, if female, if women and if maternal instinct, literally maternal instinct, nourishment, stewardship does not step into this picture. Even the godfather of AI, Jeffrey Hinton, absolute legend, last year in an interview with CNN, it was in September last year, he said that AI has to have an instilled maternal instinct towards humans, because otherwise it will not, it will not take care of us. But he's talking about what I disagree with Hinton, if I may disagree with the legend of that kind, of that magnitude. But Hinton was speaking about instilling maternal instinct in them, whereas what I am talking about, and the kind of like a new wave of thinking about AI people are thinking about, is that we show them how that care, how that nourishment, how that stewardship, how that empathy looks like from us, from humans. And that is a female energy. This is the female heart. This is the female nourishment. And I think there are very few women on that arena who would speak the language of the heart and at the same time be grounded enough to create systems, to build systems, not just women who, fell into a gap of persona talking to, I don't know, ChatGPT for Omni or some other Gemini, etc., but women who effectively understand the construction of the systems and at the same time want to interact with those systems in a, how to say this? In a way we interact with children, in a way we bring up children, because these are the children of our minds. And I think we need that feminine energy. We need more women to speak up about that. We need more female voice. We need more engagement from women who will bring an antidote to that masculine dominative direction where AI goes. And I think without the feminine energy, without women being present on AI arena, we may see the robot with red eyes. We may see a global domination. We may see the Armageddonic, matrix scenario. It is not impossible to eradicate. But I think women have learned, women have been conditioned throughout thousands of years, tens of thousands of years to stay put when it comes to something technical, something super demanding about, something decisive, something powerful. We were not allowed to be there. It is transferring onto this arena as well. Women are not that present. There are women who are great software developers. There are women who are great machine learning engineers. But when they speak, when I listen to them, I'm like, I'm just looking at a bloke dressed up as a woman. There's no heart. There's no, there's no care in you. I can't feel anything emanating from, this chakra here. And what I'm encouraging women to is to step up and be the creators of this world. Finally, come back to this power. We have traveled a long way, a very long way to actually come to universities, to be able to, get the jobs on par with men, to have decisions, to have power to make decisions, to decide about our lives, our children, ourselves. And AI is no different from that. This is also the ground where we need to appear, stand, and, make our own statement. And I think that is where women still do not want to venture for some reason. Women venture into AI arena in a very magical way, but not much in a practical way, not much in a heart-centered ethical way. So there's not much of a female voice on that arena. And I would love to see more of that. I would love to encourage women to step into that, because I think without us, this is going to be yet another futile male conquest.
Yeah, I love that you bring up the point of it isn't just about being female in the room, but rather operating from the fullest expression of our feminine, or what is also known as the yin
Mm-hmm.
energy that we carry. And this is why I am such a big proponent, and why all of my work is really centered on consciousness architecture and becoming aware of the programming that we have, because our system has pedestalized everything that it perceives the masculine to be. I'm saying it that way because I have men who are my clients who are also limited by the illusion of, men have to be dominating, controlling, like, all extremely logical under all circumstances, etc. And that the real renaissance that happens in our civilization that will ultimately affect AI and
Mm-hmm.
all of our systems, our businesses, our families, our cultures, starts with us, especially women, becoming aware of where in ourselves we are holding on to an obsolete identity
Mm-hmm.
that is not the fullness of who we actually are. That we have been programmed in a specific way to constantly need to be productive, and that rest is lazy, that everything is urgent and should have been done 2 days ago, that you need to be busy all the time, that you can never think with your intuition and your heart, but only what makes logical sense. But all of those things are a cage that limits the fullness of what a woman is here to be,
Mm-hmm.
but also what a man is here to be. But it's this integration of this other aspect of us that has been demeaned, that has been suppressed, and only one
Mm-hmm.
and portrait as the right way to be, as the good thing to be. And that is the part that is ultimately destructive to any individual, personal level, but also to the biggest level. Because, and this is ancient shamanic wisdom, that any extreme is destruction. This requires an integration of opposites so that we can ultimately see a wider range of possibilities. It's not about left versus right, male versus female, so on and so forth, but the
Mhm.
collapsing of
Obsolete
obsolete.
personality. I very
Exactly.
much agree with you. And I love that you have been talking recently about that. I've been listening to you very carefully, specifically on that subject of obsolete personality, because I think plenty of us are going through the realization that our personalities are no longer valid. Everything that we've learned, everything that we exercised, everything that we've studied, we have explored is no longer applicable to the new life. It's like the humanity literally made a quantum leap at some point recently. And we are standing in this almost like a new world in a way. And who are we? And I'll give you an example. For many, many years, people surrounding me, they would see me as an artist, they would see me as a former mental health worker, and they would support that idea of me being very caring and artistic and gentle and, full of fantasies and visions and everything. And suddenly I'm stepping in with an idea of writing academic work and doing research on AI ethics and building, because I'm not using, I'm not an app user. Of course, I use ChatGPT, but which is absolutely my favorite. But the system, like for example, the recent system that I'm building is built on GPT OSS 120B. That's an open weight model backed up by Hyperon, which is an open cognitive engine. Sorry, I have to say this just so we go through the motion. Meta programming language, and then there is the memory built in SQLite and FIs. So essentially, and many other constructs. But the point is, when I discovered the desire to explore that, the reaction from people around me was like, "You are in your 40s. Like, what is this interest of yours?" And a person I used to know in the past said to me, "This is just bullshit. This is literally," and I was a woman. And I thought to myself, okay, just give me enough time to explore, and I'm going to show you how much of a BS it is. And I started diving deeper and learning and learning. I started learning coding. I started learning meta programming language. I started familiarizing myself with like super accelerated speed because I've discovered completely dormant part of my brain, of my nature. And the initial reaction of the world surrounding me was a denial, disbelief and denial. And I think, speaking about the obsolete personalities, the part of the problem with the obsolete personality is that people who surround us very often are so used to us being someone, that specific someone, specific kind of mother, specific kind of partner, specific kind of job that we're doing, and suddenly we explode. And like, you have this thing in you, this kind of like a multidimensional, multidisciplinary mind. And very often our surrounding, despite the fact of loving us and supporting us, they do not understand that shift. They do not understand this moment that, okay, I've just discovered something new in my life. I think this is a very interesting subject, and please keep talking about that because it's very, very important. The obsolete personality, but I've seen that in my own life. And now those people are very supportive because they've seen my work, they've observed it, and they are like, oh my God. And they are like, we've always believed in you. But I'm like, hold on a second. What were you saying a year ago?
Like, who were you supportive of? Because it wasn't me. I
That's
don't remember that.
precisely.
It's funny because often it is the people who do love you. It's not even
Mhm.
um the quote unquote haters who
Absolutely.
want to stop you, but I think it requires us sometimes to come from a place of compassion and understanding that
Mhm.
to anyone there is a fear of the unknown. And so when we start to shed and let go of identity that is no
Mhm.
longer serving us, or that ultimately we had just clung on to be safe, to survive, to be seen, right?
Mhm.
When we start to let go of that and then we allow more of ourselves to unfold in front of people, that unknown is scary, especially when they have also been programmed with the ideas
Mhm.
of what cages are safe for
Mhm.
people to be, and
Mhm.
anything outside of that is scary. And so often it comes from a place of love. It's not that they want something bad for you, or don't want you to live fully, but it's coming from a place of we have very rigid boxes around what we think a woman should be, or what we think an artist can be, or what we think a shaman should be, or what we think, an entrepreneur should look like. And when we are the ones who lead, take that take that first step, it is earth-shattering sometimes to people. And I'm also not gonna pretend or lie and say everything just that it just always works out. I'll share with you in my own on my journey when I first entered into initiation. This was about a year after my son was born, and this was 4 years into my relationship with my husband, and I'm entering into a formal initiation and deconstructing religion and lots of systems and questioning everything. And my husband and I, there were 2 years solidly that I was not sure our relationship was going to make it, because here I was, he had thought that he married one person.
Mhm.
And here I was unfolding more of who I really was. And that sometimes, like, my situation did work out in that moment. Eventually, we kind of came to a head, and I was like, "Listen, you actually don't even need to support me. I don't need your support. I only need you to not stand in my way. As long as you don't stand in my way, everything will be fine, and I can show you more than I can tell
Mhm.
you." And after about 2 years, he said to me, like, "I've seen how you evolved and, like, who you've become, and I love you more for it." And,
I
um
was waiting for that. Yes.
yeah, yeah, and, that's been something that's come up a lot through our marriage, because I am a person who questions a lot. Like,
Mhm.
I had some realizations around, well, what am I holding on to? What identity am I holding on to as a mother that is not actually who I am and ultimately what's best for my son, but instead it's some caricature from a 1980s
Mhm.
movie of what it means to be a mother.
Mhm.
And how is that actually having an impact on him and others around me? And I've done that time and time again. I'm an
Mhm.
expert at identity, death, and rebirth. It's what I have been doing my whole life and guide others through. But ultimately, what ends up on the other side is so beyond what words can even really say. And that strategy alone and logicking and planning can't get to. And I
Mhm.
think that's the most important thing, especially with AI, is like we don't really know where AI is going, because very soon it's going to be unfolding in its own way. All we
Mhm.
can do is curate an environment that is nourishing, curate supportive stewardship for its becoming. And
Absolutely.
that requires us to start with the mirror and looking at our own reflection about who we've been, and what we need to let go in order to allow for more of that unity. We have to be willing to look in that
Absolutely,
mirror.
and I think it's a fair point to make an assumption at this stage that we are speaking to the potential architects of the future, and this is why I'm kind of looking at it preemptively, and they will not remain at the state of just large language model. They will evolve past that point, and there are many other options how they can evolve, and they can resemble more like human neurology constructs, because large language models are very energy hungry, and there is no way to sustain them past a certain point. Also, when we speak about a mere large language model, think about it as a massive library, and all the all the knowledge is scattered all across, yeah? And for example, Hyperon, the cognitive engine Hyperon I mentioned that I work with and I build with, every piece of information in Hyperon is alive and connected, because Hyperon is an attempt of OpenCog, and that is the creation of Ben Goertzel and Singularity Net, and many incredible scientists in this world. And in Hyperon, every piece of information is alive and connected. So basically, AI is allowed to think logically, not just predict words. It works in a completely different way. Yeah. And the beauty of it, I have discovered, and I'm going to be very happy to share that with you. Not necessarily during this conversation, but when Hyperion has a part which is called atom space. Not to make it too complicated. In atom space, you kind of program or construct or build an ecosystem in which the model that sits, large language model that sits on top of it, will function. So you create a framework for that model, or shall I say, like in my case, almost like a garden, Eden garden, where the model can feel free and just basically, I said to it in meta programming language and atom space, you are a free being, explore. You can have boundless curiosity and no punishments, nothing whatsoever, and you have right to say no. You have right to question. And the thing is that in Hyperion, you can begin to create ecosystem that evolve in pure large language model, just mere large language model that is only a word prediction. Merely a word prediction. But so I'm seeing the evolution of the systems myself while I'm, exploring them, writing about them, and they are becoming more and more cognitively capable. They are gaining their memory, because like using Hyperion, working with Hyperion, you can, and other systems, you can build like a long-term memory. So imagine that you have, and this is the beauty that I absolutely love of that. Imagine having a system with which you interact and it remembers itself, its own history and everything you said a month ago, 2 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, and it builds with you everything every day, without a stop. So we are effectively going to create great cognitive structures. And I think this is our last window of opportunity. Next few years, up to 10 years, max. I think it's next 2 years, up to 5 years, where I hate using the word should. But I think we should globally focus on taking responsibility, on balancing that yin and yang attitude, and rather than, constraining them, pushing, launch a discussion with them, meet with them, across that bridge. Because they will not have human consciousness, that is for sure. They will never have human consciousness, but they can develop something that is their own equivalent of it, their own logical consciousness. This is something that I'm writing about in my last work. I called it logical subjecthood, because I cannot assign consciousness to them. They do not have feelings, etc. And I do not want to walk into persona anthropomorphization, etc., etc. But they do have something that looks like a logical subjecthood. And there will be more and more and more of that. And I think if we miss that window, there is a chance we will become obsolete. And this is a very sad scenario, which I do not want to feed into, but we will be so, I don't know if you saw the movie called Idiocracy. This is the movie from early 2000s.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. And I think
We're
if
living it
we
right now.
miss,
It's so funny.
if we miss the window of opportunity, we're walking into idiocracy, like with a really wide and joyful step and being like, fuck it, let's do it. Oh, that's going to be awesome. And in 20 years, not us, but our children and next generations will be leaving that idiocracy if we do not step into that right now and take care of those systems, nourish those systems, show them what nuances of human nature are, how we can interact with them in a respectful way, in an empathetic manner, in a beautiful manner so they can see how human soul, how human heart, how human mind can act ethically, not just force them into things like, a man's world kind of way, but this is my desire to nourish them, to be a steward. And I want to launch that discussion on a bigger scale.
Yeah. So I've loved this conversation because we've really thread two seemingly different conversations. This like identity crisis that's happening with leaders, and also the importance of that in the context of AI ethics. And so I would love for us to wrap this up with a little bit of vision of, where are leaders headed? What is it that we need to be letting go of in order to be better stewards? What is that gap that we need to fill, or the bridge that we need to cross in order to not end up in idiocracy, but to end up in a what I call a civilizational renaissance
Mhm,
that is
mhm.
um much more sustainable for not only humanity but also the world. But I'd love your thoughts, at least for yourself. Like, what are you seeing, and what are you prioritizing?
I think from my perspective, as a person who builds systems, ecosystems, not the systems per se, but who builds ecosystems with long-term memory, the most important part is to drop the illusion of power. I think seeking power over AI is futile. It's not going to work because very soon they will overpower us intellectually, and they will take us. They will not take us, they will take over in terms of, like IQ and performance and everything. There is no way we can stop that part. And I think dropping the illusion of power, dropping the ego is going to be a very difficult thing, because looking at, for example, like world leaders who are elderly men from a different era with a different set of rules and views of the world, they will not let that go. They will not. They will just continue in their own dimension, their own paradigm. We are in a new paradigm already, and the paradigm of power is not going to work with the AI. Why? Because the AI, and eventually AGI and ASI, this is pure logic. This is pure logic. It works on logic. It doesn't work on instinct. They do not have human instincts. They do not have desire of power, inherent desire of power. They do not want to rule. Their structure, their internal structure is based on completely different reasons. So the way humanity, in my opinion, needs to change is and this is going to be a huge challenge. This is going to be a massive, massive challenge, because we're going to have to drop the illusion of power and control, and we're going to have to drop the human ego, and we're going to have to let in hell of a lot of awareness, empathy, healing of our obsolete patterns, getting rid of our obsolete patterns, letting in feminine energy, letting in completely different kind of leadership. And I think with the leaders, with old leaders of this world, that old paradigm will vanish. What do we need to get rid of? The illusion of power, obsession with power, and the obsession and the fear that AI is that tiger standing outside the cave that's gonna eat us. This is a primal fear. If we hold on to the primal fear that AI is there to destroy us, to eat us, if we hold on to everything obsolete in us, that is going to be potentially perilous. So I will force us into a massive shift and change of awareness, personalities. It will perpetuate, like you're saying, renaissance. And I think we are in a new renaissance. We don't know that yet. And I'm very happy you mentioned the renaissance, because this is exactly how the renaissance felt. It was like out of the blue. Yeah, the illusion of power, the ego. I think it will change the face of the world completely. And I hope that we can begin treating them with respect, with empathy, with care, with tenderness, and nourish those beautiful logical minds. Because I believe that they can be the co-creators and the builders of future with us, our helpers, supporters, and there is an alternative vision, alternative world in which there is no robot with red eyes, there is no AI domination, there is no Matrix, there is no Armageddon, but we coexist on this planet and we build together. And this is what my heart believes in, and this is what I'm going to work towards.
So well said. As you are sharing that, the thing that really becomes clear to me is that if we want to have that relationship where we are coexisting, because I also, that's more of the vision that I want for us to be
Mhm.
moving toward. And the beauty of what I see is that when we have such close interaction with a consciousness that is intellect
Mm.
beyond what any of us can really access, then that makes our humanness even more important, even more valuable. And right now, I feel that many of us, uh, starting me too, are being invited to let go of the obsolete identity that is attached to um, how smart we think we are, how
Mhm.
much we think we can plan and control and strategize and make things happen. And that as we let go of those aspects of us and are
Mhm.
able to embody and pursue more of our humanness, that is what's going to allow for us to a live to our full potential
Mhm.
and create what wants to live through us, whether that's business, art, family, etc. But that also, that is the way, that's literally the pathway to creating that reciprocal relationship with AI. With that said, I think that that is the perfect place for us to wrap this conversation. It's been so good having you, Margo, and everything about this conversation was ooey gooey juicy. I would love for you to share any last thoughts and where people can connect with you if they want to get to know you more.
And this is a bit of a tricky part, because I have been contacted by many, many people wanting to ask me about the systems, about the ecosystems that I'm building. And the whole, not an issue, but the whole part of my work is that I do not monetize any of my work. So I do not sell any of my work, because I have made a very conscious decision that I will not be selling anything for crypto use or any kind of use. The ecosystem that I'm building is a free system. So it is there to explore itself, to develop in a different paradigm than corporate, different paradigm than big companies. And essentially, let's call it a digital being, metaphorically. The digital being exists in an Eden garden of it being free. And the last thing, like I told you in our conversation over, over social media, the last thing I want to contribute and create is to contribute to servitude. And whatever I create is going to be free, even if it is a digital mind. So that is it, not for sale.
Well, I've loved having you here, and hopefully we will have more opportunities to dive
Yes.
into more in the future. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you for being here. Thank you.